When I gave my name at the entrance to my sister-in-law's wedding, the hostess looked down at her tablet and told me I was not on the guest list. For a second, I honestly thought it was a mistake. I stood in the marble lobby of the St. Regis in Manhattan wearing a navy dress, borrowed diamond earrings, and heels that were already cutting into my ankles. Beyond the ballroom doors, I could hear a string quartet playing something soft and expensive. Glasses clinked. People laughed. A photographer's flash popped like tiny lightning. And there I was, holding a small silver gift box with both hands like some desperate woman who had shown up where she did not belong. "Could you please check again?" I asked. "Claire Whitmore. Or maybe under my husband's name, Daniel Whitmore." The hostess scrolled again, her face changed before her words did. "I'm very sorry, ma'am. You're not listed at any family table." Family table. I almost laughed. He had been married to Daniel for 5 years. I had sat through every Thanksgiving where his mother corrected my grammar even though I had a master's degree. I had smiled through every charity gala where his sister Madison introduced me as Daniel's wife, but never by my name. I had fixed financial reports, soothed donors, and cleaned up messes they created while they called me uptight, dramatic, and difficult. But apparently, I was not family enough for a chair. I stepped aside and called Daniel. He answered on the 4th ring. Music and laughter roared behind him. "Claire," he said, sounding irritated already, "they're saying I'm not invited." He did not even move somewhere quieter. "Did you really think you were?" My mouth went dry. "I'm your wife. You're also the woman who tried to turn Madison's wedding into one of your compliance lectures. Don't embarrass me tonight, just go home." "Daniel. No scene, Claire." Then he hung up. The hostess looked away like she wanted to disappear into the flower wall behind her. I stared at my phone, and for the first time that night, I understood this had not been anniversary. It was punishment. Madison Whitmore had planned that wedding like a royal coronation. Her fiancé, Nathaniel Pierce, came from an old Boston family with hospitals, foundations, and a last name carved onto university buildings. Daniel's mother, Eleanor Whitmore, had spent months making sure every society editor in New York knew her daughter was marrying into legacy. The ballroom was filled with donors, board members, politicians, and people who knew how to smile while measuring each other's net worth. And Madison had paid for all of it with stolen money. 2 months earlier, I received a call from Grace Bennett, the executive director of the Whitmore Hope Foundation. The foundation funded college scholarships for low-income students, mostly young women who had aged out of foster care or come from families that could not dream past rent. I worked as an independent financial compliance auditor. My job was to follow numbers until they stopped pretending. "Claire," Grace said, her voice shaking, "I need you to look at some vendor payments." Quietly. The first invoice was for imported white orchids. The second was for custom lighting. The third was for a private tasting dinner. Then came deposits for a 9-piece band, a couture cake, luxury transportation, and floral installations so large they required structural approval. All of it had been charged to scholarship accounts. Worse, every approval carried mid-digital authorization. Mine. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. That night, I confronted Daniel at our kitchen island while he was opening a bottle of Cabernet like nothing in the world could touch him. "Madison is using scholarship money to pay for her wedding." He barely glanced at the documents. "She's going to put it back. You don't borrow from students who need tuition. Don't be naive. Families move money around. That is not moving money around. That is fraud." His jaw tightened. "It's my sister's wedding. It's someone else's future." He looked at me then, cold and disappointed, as if I had failed some loyalty test I never agreed to take. "You always have to make everything ugly." 3 days later, Madison called me. "If you are planning to come to my wedding with one of your little folders," she said, "don't. You stole from a scholarship fund. It protected the wedding my family promised me. You forged my authorization." She laughed softly. "Prove it without destroying your marriage." I thought Daniel would stop her from crossing that line. I thought somewhere under his polished suits and family obedience, there was still a husband. Then I stood in that hotel lobby with my name erased and his laughter still burning in my ear. The hostess whispered, "Would you like me to call someone from the family?" I looked through the ballroom doors. Madison's wedding was glowing: crystal chandeliers, white roses, gold chairs, champagne towers, women in silk, men in tuxedos, cameras waiting to capture a perfect family's perfect night. I walked calmly to the gift table. The silver box in my hands looked small next to the huge wrapped packages and embossed envelopes. I set it between 2 towering arrangements and placed the card on top where anyone could read it. "For Madison. Congratulations. Claire." It did not cry. I did not beg. I did not raise my voice. I simply left the truth on the gift table. Then I walked out of the St. Regis got into a cab and told the driver, JFK, please. As Manhattan blurred into streaks off gold and glass behind me, I turned off my phone. Because when Madison opened my gift in front of everyone, she was going to scream my name. And this time, I was not going to answer. I did not go to the airport because I was running away. I went because airports are full of people leaving one version of their life behind, and that felt more honest than any room Daniel Whitmore had ever stood in. I bought a coffee I never drank and sat near a window facing the runway. Planes rolled through the dark like giant animals. My phone stayed black on the table beside me. Inside that ballroom, Madison would be floating through her first dance. Eleanor would be telling donors how the Whitmore family had always believed in education. Daniel would be smiling beside his mother, pretending his wife was home with a headache instead of thrown out like a problem. They thought they had controlled me. They did not know control is useless once evidence has already changed hands. The silver box contained 4 things. First, a forensic audit showing every transfer from the scholarship fund to wedding vendors. Second, a temporary court order freezing the foundation's discretionary accounts. Third, the board resolution appointing me a external compliance supervisor until the investigation concluded. Fourth, a personal cashier's check from me, enough to cover the honest vendors who had no idea Madison was paying them with stolen tuition money. On top, I had placed a handwritten note, scholarships are not wedding decorations. At 10:17 p.m., my phone lit up. Madison. Then Daniel. Then Eleanor. Then Daniel again. Then a number I did not recognize. I watched their names appear and vanish like bad weather passing over glass. Finally, Grace texted me. The accounts are frozen. The board has the audit. The donors saw everything. The scholarships are safe. For the first time in weeks, I breathed. I learned the details later. Madison had decided to open a few special family gifts before dessert because the photographer wanted candid reaction shots. She saw my silver box and smirked. At least she sent something, she said. People laughed because people always laughed when a wealthy woman gave them permission. She opened the lid. At first, she thought it was paperwork. Then she saw the court seal. Then the audit summary. Then the vendor names. Her face went pale beneath $3,000 worth off makeup. Eleanor leaned over and hissed, "What is that?" Madison tried to close the box, but Grace was already moving across the room with 2 board members and a donor attorney. That document belongs to the foundation, Grace said. Daniel rushed forward. Give it to me. But Nathaniel picked up the first page before Daniel could take it. I was told the silence fell so hard that even the band stopped playing. Nathaniel read the line out loud, not dramatically, not loudly, but clearly enough for the front tables to hear. Wedding-related expenses totaling $486,000 were withdrawn from restricted scholarship accounts. Then he looked at Madison. You used scholarship money for our wedding? Madison grabbed his wrist. No. Claire twisted everything. She's obsessed with making me look bad. Grace's voice stayed calm, the audit is independent. The authorization trail was falsified. Daniel said, this is a private family matter. That was his mistake. Because one of the donors, a retired federal judge, stood up and said, restricted charitable funds are not a private family matter. Madison began to cry then, but not because she was sorry. She cried because the room had stopped obeying her. Eleanor tried to recover. There has clearly been a misunderstanding. We will address this after the celebration. Nathaniel stepped back from Madison. After the celebration? My name is on this wedding. Madison panicked. And when spoiled people panic, they reach for whoever helped them most. She turned to Daniel and shouted, you said Claire would never dare. You said you handled her. Everyone heard it, that was the first twist. My husband had not merely protected Madison after learning what she did. He had been part of the plan to silence me. Grace later told me Daniel went gray. Eleanor sat down as if someone had removed the bones from her body. Nathaniel's father pulled out his phone and began calling lawyers. Donors started demanding copies of the audit. Someone from a society magazine slipped out before dessert. By midnight, the wedding was no longer a wedding. It was a crime scene wearing white roses. I sat alone at gate 24, watching my phone vibrate until the battery warning appeared. Then Grace texted again. A student named Maya Jennings keeps her scholarship because of this. I stared at that sentence for a long time. Maya Jennings. I knew that name. I had seen it in the files. 19 years old. First-generation college student. Accepted into a nursing program in Ohio. Her mother cleaned offices at night. Her father had died when she was 12. Her scholarship payment had been delayed because Madison's florist deposit had drained the account. That was the second twist. The silver box had not just ruined a wedding. It had saved a life waiting to begin. I turned my phone back off, leaned my head against the window, and cried for the first time. Not for Daniel. Not for Madison. For every version of myself that had been taught silence was the price of being loved. Daniel came to my apartment 3 days later. He knocked 3 times, sharp and controlled, the way lawyers knock before delivering bad news. When I opened the door, he looked less like my husband and more like a man who had lost access to a room he used to own. His tie was loose. His eyes were bloodshot. His wedding ring was still on. "We need to talk," he said. "We already talked," I replied. "You asked if I really thought I was invited." He flinched but came in anyway, because Daniel had always mistaken proximity for permission. He looked around my apartment, the books stacked near the window, the half-empty mug on my desk, the file boxes labeled by case number. He used to call this place your little courtroom, as if my work were a personality flaw. "You could have handled this privately," he said. I tried. "You humiliated my family." "No, Daniel. I stopped your family from stealing from students." His face hardened. "Madison made a mistake." A mistake is sending the wrong centerpiece totable 8. Madison diverted restricted scholarship funds and forged my authorization. She was under pressure. She was under a chandelier paid for by a girl's tuition. He looked away. I walked to my desk, opened the top drawer, and took out a folder. He frowned. "What's that?" "Divorce papers." The room went still. For the first time since I had known him, Daniel had no prepared expression. "You're ending our marriage over my sister's wedding?" I almost smiled because it was so perfectly Daniel. Shrink the crime until it called fit inside a party. Shrink my pain until it sounded unreasonable. "No," I said. "I'm ending our marriage because when your sister stole money, you protected her. When she forged my name, you pressured me to stay quiet. And when your wife stood alone in a hotel lobby being humiliated, you chose the people humiliating her." His jaw worked. "My family is falling apart. Then maybe they should stop building themselves out of lies." He stepped closer. "Claire, listen me. If you sign a statement saying you misunderstood the account transfers, we can contain this. The Madison can repay everything. My mother can keep her seat. You and I can move past it." There it was. The third twist. He had not come to apologize. He had come to recruit me back into the cover-up. I opened another folder and placed it on the table. Daniel stared at it. "What is this?" "A recording." His face changed. "Of what?" "You. In our kitchen. Telling me Madison would put the money back. Telling me families move money around. Telling me not to make it ugly." His mouth opened, but no sound came. "I live in New York, Daniel. One-party consent. And before you accuse me of trapping you, remember that I recorded you after I found my forged digital signature on $500,000 in stolen scholarship funds." He sat down slowly. For once, Daniel Whitmore looked small. "You wouldn't use that against him." I looked at the man I had once loved. The man who had danced with me in our first apartment, who had cried when his father died, who had also let his mother and sister carve pieces out of me because it was easier than standing beside me. I already gave it to the board's counsel. Heisey's filled with something close to fear, Claire. No statement. No silence. No marriage. Weeks later, Daniel signed the divorce papers. The investigation did what rich families fear most: it made private behavior public. Madison was removed from the foundation. Eleanor lost her honorary chair. Daniel resigned from the board and was later named in the civil complaint for helping suppress the audit. The foundation recovered the stolen funds, and the new board voted to publish quarterly reports online. The wedding remained in the news for 12 days. Not because of Madison's gown. Not because of the orchestra. Because of the silver box. Nathaniel did not annul the marriage immediately, but he separated from Madison within 1 month. I heard he moved back to Boston and his family Saturnays made sure the Pierce name stayed far away from the Whitmore mess. I did not celebrate. Real freedom, I learned, does not feel like fireworks. It feels like taking a full breath without asking permission. 6 months later, I stood in a high school auditorium in Cleveland, watching Maya Jennings walk across a stage in a blue dress with shaking hands. The foundation had invited me to the scholarship ceremony as its permanent compliance director. I almost said no. I was tired of the Whitmore name, tired of lawsuits, tired of being called ruthless by people who thought charity was a branding strategy. Then Grace sent me Maya's essay. So I went. Maya stepped up to the microphone, clutching her certificate. "I thought college was for other people," she said. "People with parents who knew how financial aid worked. People who didn't have to choose between books and groceries. This scholarship means I get to become a nurse. It means my little brothers get to see somebody in our family make it out." Her voice broke. "My mom told me someone protected this money when it would have been easier to look away. I didn't know who you are, but thank you." I cried in the third row like a woman whose heart had finally understood the math. After the ceremony, Maya found me near the lobby. "Are you Claire?" she asked. I nodded. She hugged me before I could prepare myself. My mom says thank you, she whispered. I held on to her and thought about every time the Whitmores had called me dramatic for caring about numbers. Those numbers had names. Tuition, rent, books. Bus passes. Lab fees. Second chances. Maya pulled back and smiled. You saved my seat. I swallowed hard. No, I said. It was always yours. That evening, Grace handed me a folder with the new scholarship program. The board wants you toasty permanently, she said. I'll stay on one condition. She laughed. I'm afraid to ask. No Whitmore signs off on a single dollar without external review. Already written in. I walked back to my hotel through downtown Cleveland with cold air on my face and a strange peace in my chest. I was not the woman outside the St. Regis anymore, holding a gift and waiting for permission to belong. I belong to myself now. Sometimes people think betrayal happens when someone stops loving you. I think the worst betrayal is when someone loves their image more than your truth. Daniel wanted a wife who made his family look decent. Madison wanted my signature without my conscience. Eleanor wanted charity without accountability. And me? I wanted peace so badly that I once confused silence with loyalty. Now I know better. I live in a smaller apartment than the one issued with Daniel. My closet has fewer gowns. My phone rings less. Nobody tells me which rooms I am allowed to enter. Every year, when the foundation sends out scholarship letters, I think about that night in Manhattan. The chandeliers. The hostess's embarrassed face. Daniel's voice asking if I really thought I was invited. No, Daniel. I was not invited to your sister's wedding. But the truth was. And unlike me, nobody could keep it outside.